From Sydney, and welcome to the Proof of Concept podcast, the tech show where we explore real life use cases from the field and discuss some of the hot questions in the field of data science and AI. I am, as always, your host, Grant Case, and as always, my partner in crime up there in Singapore. Hello, Alex Hubert.
Hi, guys. Hi, Grant. Nice to speak to you again.
Oh, it's always a great day when we're talking about data science and AI. And today's interesting little topic we're going to talk about is the data catalog. Is it dead? What is it? It's kind of an interesting concept. It's something that's been around for some time. And as always, let's start off the show here and tell us a little bit, Alex, about what is the cool stuff you can do with a data catalog.
When people think about data catalog, right, obviously we think that concept that probably only exists in enterprise, right? It's going to be that massive repository where you have data and some metadata about the data. You think about something like a catalog, right? Not something you really want to explore, but you can actually do some very cool things outside of the enterprise with data catalog. And the first example that comes in mind is all the stuff around open data. You have a lot of different entities worldwide. In France, we have something called the BAN, but I'm thinking about Harvard when I was doing some research on the topic. They have some open data that they reference through a data catalog. So what is it exactly? Well, they have a bunch of data sets that can be useful for different students that want to explore and discuss some like use cases related to data. So they have like somewhat of an expertise in a field. Like I was looking, for instance, into the Shuttle API or the financial aid data set, where you can find all the statistics and breakdown for financial aid on a lot of different schools. So you basically go on a portal, you know what you're looking for. You can explore the data, you can explore the metadata, you can explore the columns, you can explore a lot of things about this data set, and then you retrieve the data that you want to start working with it. It's as simple as that, a data catalog. And yeah, like there's a couple of cool use case in the open source world.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think we end up a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals actually interact with, and I would give a lot of kudos to. We're typically always kind of befuddling on, well, what's going on with governments? What are they not being as progressive when it comes to data science and AI? This is one area where the public sector has actually gotten ahead of the private sector. So, for example, when I was my former home city was New York, New York City open data, where you literally have the entirety of, and this has gone on for over a decade now, where New York City has published all of these different data sets about what's going on with the subways, the buses, restaurant ratings, etc. All stuff that we can all kind of work with.
Because in France we have some similar stuff. You don't have the rating, you don't find that kind of data super easily, but definitely the subway. I remember one of my first use cases I did at Dataiku was with open data related to the bike sharing stuff, the bike sharing stations.
City bike sharing. Yep.
Yeah. So you have a big data catalog saying that you can access through a portal, and then people can retrieve what they're looking for.
Yeah. And I think that ends up being kind of this, what is the cool thing about this? It's just being able to get to the data itself. And I think that's ultimately one of the keys when we try to explain this. So just as always, let's, how would we explain this like a 5-year-old to our CEO? What is it the data catalog that they should know?
Yeah. So essentially, if you just draw the line you draw the parallel from the open source world, the open data world, really, that we have described, and you put that in the context of the enterprise, it's a similar idea. A data catalog is going to be a piece of software. First of all, it's different from the concept of data dictionary that I guess we're going to talk about a little later. But it's a piece of software. It's very often a web app, something like this that you can access, and where you're going to find information about tables, about columns in those tables, all sort of metadata, again, related to the huge number of data you might have within your organization. So for instance, a very dear customer of us, Grant, has about 700,000 tables. Well, a data catalog is going to be super useful for the different data practitioner within the enterprise to identify the data set that they want to look for, that they need to work for, to build use cases, to build report, to answer questions to the regulators, to answer questions to execs. And sometimes you used to work with certain data set, but sometimes you have to do a little bit of lateral thinking. And this is where the data catalog is going to be super helpful for you, because yeah, you can find some related items through the data catalog.
Yeah. I think when I think about the data catalog and the benefit of something, a great use case out there right now, and they've actually published a lot of different open source projects. This one I would love to see, but it hasn't seen yet. Is Airbnb has always been a very progressive organization in and around analytics and AI, and data obviously is the lifeblood of that organization. Their data catalog is 200,000 tables, very
wow.
well manicured and managed, so that ultimately, that data catalog is there to get speed to value, right? So that to me is when I'm trying to break this down, it's like, what if you could search your data just like you search Google, and find the things, find the context, and ultimately get the results that you need. So for me, that becomes kind of the real benefit of and why it's so important to have these data catalogs.
But at
And
the
what,
same time, and I think you just said it in that Airbnb example, the reason why some people would think right now that the data catalog is dying, or the way we know it makes it an old concept, is because you just said it. There are some inherent problem associated to it, and the fact that you have to say that there is about 200 tables perfectly manicured. Who's taking
what?
care of
Data
that?
is not perfect. What are you talking about? It's
Who's taking
always perfect, Alex. Come on.
yeah, and who's taking care of making sure that the data catalog is always up to date, always refreshed with the latest piece of data? That what gives the confidence for users to get into a data catalog and think like, can I trust the data that I see right now?
Yeah.
And when you consider the volumetry of the sheer volume of data that we generate every day, that big organization generate every day, I'd be very curious to see how Airbnb, for instance, is dealing with such a problem, because it's
Yeah.
just it's the scale of data that makes it difficult right now for data catalog to stay relevant.
And how about you here in the audience? How do you feel about data catalogs? Are you finding them? Do you have them in your organization? Have you interacted with them in the public sector? Hey, give us a comment. Give us some feedback. Love to hear from you on LinkedIn and YouTube. Please follow us and let us know what you think about the data catalog. And that kind of is a nice dovetail, Alex, into our compare and contrast. So how did we get here? And I think this is one of probably the most interesting things about the data catalog. And this is actually very indicative of our conversation around the feature store, right? People are in this concept of I don't want to have to go try to find the data. I don't want to recreate something that someone's already done. So in theory, I should be able to get to that, if Alex has built something, I can come back and use what Alex has had, and I don't have to redo it. So when I'm
Yeah.
thinking about the compare and contrast, I'm trying to think about how much effort does it take for me to go find what's needed or what Alex did versus should I just really go back and redo it myself? Because I don't know what the value is. I don't know, like you said, the quality associated with it. And that to me is kind of this juxtaposition, this tension between kind of the data catalog. For those of us who sit around and been around a while, we think about things like master data management and is the
Yeah.
data correct? But there's a lot of manual intervention. We got to have data stewards. We've got to do data dictionaries. etc. So for me, that's kind of the interesting thing about all of this is it's obviously something of value, but how much does it take to me to get to that value?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Actually, when we take a step back for a very long time, you just had data dictionaries, and data dictionaries were enough because again,
Yeah.
the volume of data made it enough in itself, and the data catalog is just the next step on
Mhm.
top of data dictionaries. And actually, data dictionaries now are definitely part. It's an important key component of the data catalog. And because the problems around scalability of data, the problems around can I trust those data, the data morphism, the speed at which data are changing, makes
Mhm.
it super complex to manage a good data catalog. And ultimately, what you end up seeing, at least in the organization that we talk to when we do POCs across APAC, yeah, you realize that yeah, there is a big central data catalog, but then every teams manage their own little own repositories
Mhm.
that reference all the assets that they end up just using for themselves, that they use over and over and over again, which defeat the first overall purpose of the metadata catalog, if I may say, because
Yeah.
people don't really trust it. It's not very useful to discover potential other tables that can make your job easier,
Mhm.
that can enhance your use case. And it just becomes that overarching central repository that is going to be used to create local repositories and local data catalog per team. And in that case, it starts to lose a little bit of its value.
Yeah, to me, this also you bring up a good point there, and it's I as a team are starting to work with this alone. So, we always talk about this tension here in just IT in general, is centralization versus decentralization. I
Yeah.
think the concept of the data catalog is a very centralization concept. But in the case of our, Airbnb, which has 200,000 tables, our friends here in APAC with has 700,000 tables.
Yeah.
How are you going to ever deal with that? And to be fair, if I'm looking for something and I'm in one part of this organization, is looking for another piece of data that's in the completely other side of the organization even valuable? So we start
Yeah.
getting to this concept of, yeah, you have a centralization, but is it really valuable to know that, I'm in marketing and Alex is doing something in operations and they're doing a completely different set of data? Does that even make sense for me? Right.
Yeah.
So that to me becomes the issue when
Yeah.
it comes to this.
Yeah. Essentially, there's a couple of big issues. Yeah, and the last one that we are touching upon right now is definitely the kind of distribution. Like how much can you have we live within the era of uh, like scalability and distribute the compute, distribute data set across different nodes and stuff. You realize that the data catalog in itself is some concept that is very standalone, very heavy, and doesn't deal very well with that need for flexibility and distribution
Yeah,
across data set and
exactly.
across different teams.
I feel like anytime I hear data catalog, I'm thinking of this big behemoth thing that,
Yep.
this it's being blessed by IT, and we got a real interesting thing to work with for like the first 6 months, and then it kind of goes sideways, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about data catalogs? Is this something of interest to you? Do you find value in it? Please hit us up on LinkedIn. Drop us a comment or here on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you in terms of your thoughts in and around the data catalog. So let's actually talk a little bit about the value. How do we make money, save money, improve the customer experience when it comes with the data catalog? What value does it bring? Uh,
Yeah.
I
So
think we all.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So the value you get from it, if it's done right,
Mhm.
and if it's done right, and if it, I would say, if it sits in a reasonably manageable park of data, the value is pretty obvious. It's very similar to our conversation on the feature store again, like
Mhm.
gaining time, gaining productivity, um, potentially finding that little table that's going to make such a big difference
Mhm.
in improving the accuracy of a model, or just simply finding that really cool table that's going to help you build a super cool use case and a super new cool feature that you can add to your website or to your offering. So in terms of discoverability and gain in time and productivity, those are the obvious gains. But I
Mhm.
would caveat that to the size of your organization. I think there is a potential um, um, like almost inverse relationship in terms of productivity gain that you have through a data catalog, linked to the size of the data that you actually ask the data catalog to manage. The more data you have, the more table you have. When you start talking about 700,000 tables, more than 1 million tables, I really doubt that the value you're going to get from it is going to be, proportional, essentially.
Mhm. Yeah. And again, I think when it comes to these table, the whole idea of a data catalog, yes, save money, make it easier, make it more efficient to get to stuff, build those features. But I, and I'll talk a little bit about my predictions here in a few minutes because we do have a number of partners that are working in this area, and there's definitely a lot of, there's a lot of potential value that's being derived and generated by different organizations with data catalogs. But for me, it's, you know, you're you can save money. You can, in effect, help yourself from a compliance perspective as we talk about
Yeah.
things like responsible AI. Are we
Yeah.
using the right level of columns to actually do something correctly? So yeah, so those are the sorts. I almost think it's more valuable as a time saver and a potential keep you out of jail
Yeah,
when it
exactly.
comes to the data catalog itself. So
Exactly. And especially the modern data catalogs, like they have all those, they're very complete, right?
mhm,
Especially on the security features.
mhm,
They're going to guarantee you that from data access, data usage, PII data, all those very sensitive type of topic related to the regulator. They're going to make sure that you can explore and access the right data that you are supposed to explore and use at the first place. So yeah, the get you out of jail card
mhm,
is a huge component as well, for
yeah.
sure.
All right. And so now let's here to wrap up the show. Let's talk about predictions because I've got a lot of interesting predictions in and around this when it comes to the data catalog itself. Every organization I've worked with, you have to have a culture of ensuring the completeness, the accuracy of the data catalog. It is actually work to do that. And it's not fun work. There's a reason you had this concept and idea of data stewards. People that are sole job is to make sure that that what's going into the data catalog is correct and the data that's coming through is correct to ensure our data quality. But in in the end, it's incredibly manually intensive.
Yeah,
Think about our customer, with 700,000 tables.
it
They
must be a
want to,
nightmare.
yeah, it's like to me, this is where AI and machine learning should be able to help automate this. Because to be fair, I'm looking for this next leap because we know there's value here, but it's the automation to get
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
versus I'm got somebody who's keeping this stuff up. It just can't happen. You can't do this with, as you say, the speed at which data is moving, changing, new columns, new data being created inside of an organization. It just can't be done with if you're in, hey, I need to do it myself, right? Or I need a team to do it. I think this is one place where it's ripe for the potential for automation and AI.
Yeah, I agree.
Something, to deal with this, because quite frankly, the organizations that work well in it ends up being very much more driven by from a compliance perspective and regulatory, not necessarily everybody else. So I think about banks, I think about government agencies, organizations that are very much in the, or we're talking about public sector where it's
Yep.
open season, right, on this
Yep.
stuff, and you need some of that. But to me, that becomes like, unless we bridge this gap of making it easier to deal with 700,000 tables inside of our organization, yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
always, you're going to be, you're just running against the clock that
Yeah,
entire
yeah, I
way.
agree. And I was preparing the show. I was actually surprised that there isn't a bigger offering of data catalogs powered by AI and ML, not only to automate, like to a certain extent, what you just explained really well, like automate all the manual work that people have to do right now, but also to make discoverability so much better. Because again, right now the assumption with a data catalog is you already kind of know what you're looking for, but across
Mhm.
700,000 tables, you you can't know what you don't know, right? And if you don't have a good data catalog that can suggest you tables, that can tell you, hey, people looking for this table, for instance, are also looking at that table.
Mhm.
People with your set of right, they're also looking at this type of table. If you don't have some good tools that are going to help you to discover the right set of data at the right time, it's probably, again, the value is probably diminishing a little bit.
Yeah.
So I would say that I don't think, we were saying like data catalog are dead. I think they are dead in the instance that they are right now. They're going to force to keep evolving to
Mhm.
become much more user friendly,
Mhm.
and deliver back some of that value to the different users. And I wouldn't be surprised once again to see a cloud providers coming with a full stack offering on top of their core storage that says,
Yeah.
look, it's super easy for us now to find your
Yeah.
data and what's in there and stuff
Well,
like
you've
that.
already seen this in AWS and GCP have a couple of these
Yeah.
uh, different catalogs, and when we're talking about Athena and those sorts of toolings, absolutely. And to me, the missing key is the context, and always has been when it comes
Yeah.
to the data catalog. And that's why we all love Google. That's where we start our journey when we're looking for something. Well, Google can pull out the context of what you're looking at. And when it comes to, a bunch of structured data inside of a database, you don't have that context
No,
necessarily. And that
no,
becomes the problem. And I think that is where somebody's going to do something cool with AI. And if they
for sure.
do, I'm looking at it as, I remember at the beginning of like the 2010s, we saw this big transformation from BI, business intelligence, Crystal Decision, uh, you know, Cognos and other toolings. And then our friends at Tableau came along and brought this
Yeah.
tool in. And it's like, holy wow, this is so changed my paradigm. I think
Yeah.
this place is ripe for that. And that's what I'm looking for, because I think ultimately it's something we all want. We don't want to recreate
Yeah, for
work. We
sure.
want it to come to it, right?
For sure.
Uh,
If you have
my,
something that exactly what you described, like you have somewhat of a Google that you can put on top of your HDFS or your S3 buckets or whatever. When it becomes difficult is the data is siloed in lot of different places. That's probably the real challenges. But if you can just come and then use a search engine and give a
Mhm.
couple of keywords, and you have all the tables that you can see once again,
Yeah.
because we shouldn't put that aside, like all the security aspect, but you can find all those data, that those tables that you're supposed to see
Mhm.
ranked by orders. uh that's to be extremely valuable for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's our friend decentralization versus centralization. That
Yeah.
that tension is always remaining, and we just need we need AI to get us there. So, and
For sure.
let us know what you think in terms of your predictions uh, around this whole concept and idea of data catalogs. Is this something that's going to continue to grow? Is it going to be stagnant? Are we ripe to see some sort of very amazing change? I'm holding up my hand. I would love to see it as well. So, follow us on LinkedIn, drop us a comment, follow us on, subscribe to YouTube. We'd love to hear from you in terms of the comments around this. And we had some great comments in our last podcast. We're going to be trying to bring those in here in some of our newer podcasts and answer some of those questions from previous times. But as always, Alex, always enjoy the conversation. Thanks
Thanks,
so much
Grant.
for joining us from Singapore.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks, guys.
And thank you, everybody. And please make sure to join us again here on the Proof of Concept podcast. Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for upcoming episodes. Follow us on Dataiku with LinkedIn and YouTube channels. See you soon. Thanks and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.